Hey Mixers, welcome back to another NFL video. Today we're going to be talking about some early week one player props that I like. I already have two other videos out, one talking money line spreads, totals, sides, etc., and one talking about touchdown calls. If you prefer those all to be in one long video, let me know in the comments. I think a lot of people prefer the shorter videos, so let me know what you prefer. I did break those down into 3 short videos. So I have 3 early week one player props, games, totals, and spreads, and touchdown call videos out. Go check those out. And if you're new here, please like and subscribe, leave a little comment, leave a like. My picks will always be free to you. So I appreciate the free little things that you can do for me. All right, guys, let's jump into those early player props. All right, guys, way too early week one player props. These are starting to pop up on some of the betting apps. And so I wanted to get ahead of the curve here. I think early lines provide the best value. So let's jump into this. The first one here is going to be our thumbnail, Christian McCaffrey, over 70.5 rushing yards. Christian McCaffrey has never had less than 79 rushing yards against Seattle, even going back to his days at Carolina. So he has always scored at least 79 rushing yards or more against Seattle. Now they are playing in Seattle, but he was able to get over 100 rushing yards in his 2 career games in Seattle. So I don't have any problem taking this at 70.5. I might even take a flyer for some plus money at 100 if it comes out. That is not available right now, but when it does become available at over 100, I do expect this line to move up probably to about 80. So getting it at 70.5, I think that's a steal right now. Also, with obviously Juwan Jennings in contract disputes with the 49ers, we've got Ricky Pearsall on the PUP list, we've got Brandon Ayuk on the PUP list. So I think that they are going to rely on Christian McCaffrey in this game. All right, our next best bet is going to be Achane over 50.5 rushing yards against the Colts. I am seeing this between 50.5 and 55.5 on a couple different sites. So this line is probably going to start moving up. I don't know how far it will move up. And I also want to probably take a look at the combo line when the combo line comes out, the rushing and receiving combo line. But he is over in 7 of 17 games last year. You can see that in this first chart here. He did have 77 against Indianapolis last season. And then last year, 13 running backs were able to clear this line against the Colts in 2024. 4 running backs last year were able to go over 100 against the Colts. So I think this is a great spot for Achane. I don't expect the Dolphins to be very good this year, but one of the good things about the Dolphins is going to be Achane. So we are taking him over 50.5 rushing yards. And then Drake Maye over 217.5 passing yards. Now, this is now at 215.5, so you can even get a better price than what I paid for this. I think the number will stay pretty close to this, so 215 to 225 probably. I don't think it will fluctuate much between that, but he's been over in 6 of the 10 full games that he played last year, and the Raiders were ranked dead last in their secondary by PFF this year. They're ranked dead last in their secondary by PFF this year. So people are going to be able to throw on the Raiders. And Drake Maye is pretty good. And so anyway, only 6 quarterbacks missed this line against the Raiders last year. Spencer Rattler even had 218 against them. So he went over this line. Let me just go over a couple of the quarterbacks that missed this line, the 6 quarterbacks that missed. Let me tell you the circumstances here. Kirk Cousins, he missed. Bijan had 125 rushing yards and the Falcons won the game. Matthew Stafford missed. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were both out in that game. Kyren had 76 on the ground. The Rams won the game. Justin Fields missed this line. Najee had over 100 on the ground. The Steelers won 32-13. Bo Nix missed this line. The Broncos won 34-18. And he did clear it easily in his other game that he played against the Raiders last year. Deshaun Watson missed this. This is the only legitimate miss, and we know Deshaun Watson was a dumpster fire last year. So that's the only legitimate miss. And then Justin Herbert missed this line in one of his games, and in that game, J.K. Dobbins had 135 yards on the ground. The Chargers won 22-10, and Herbert had 346 passing yards in his other game against the Raiders. So if we think that the Patriots are blowing the Raiders out by 20 points, then maybe Drake Maye doesn't hit this line. But if this game is at all competitive, then Drake Maye is going to soar over this line, in my opinion. I would probably look at playing this over 250 when those alt lines start to come out. If I want to dive into it a little bit more before I made that call, but I do think that in the competitive games, these quarterbacks are going to soar over this number against the Raiders this year. All right, our next pick is going to be Jonathan Taylor over 80.5 rushing yards. That is on the other side of the ball from the Dolphins. So he is going up against the Dolphins. He is over this in 13 of 17 games last season. He had a great season last year. If you did not pay attention, he went over 100 rushing yards 8 times. He went over 200 once. Only 3 running backs cleared this line against the Dolphins last season, though. So it's kind of like a mixed stat bag here. He did miss against the Texans, the Lions, the Steelers, and the Jets, which were all good defenses. 3 of them were playoff teams. So that's the only time he missed this line last year was 4 times. So I think that he can get there for us. He did have over 100 in his game against the Dolphins last year. And I think that a lot of these teams are going to be keeping it on the ground in the first week of the season, in my opinion. All right, the next best bet. This one's a little bit, some crazy things are going on here. So I got Trey Harris over 29.5 receiving yards. He's on the Chargers. If you don't know, he's a rookie. And that line has now moved to 34.5. I don't like it as much there. I liked it when it was under 30. So we'll see where that line moves, though, because the Chargers might be bringing on another wide receiver here. It sounds like they're in some talks for another wide receiver, so we'll see what happens. But let me show you the 2 games last year. So in the 2 games last year where the Chargers and the Chiefs played, at home it was a 17-10 loss. Ladd McConkey had 67, Josh Palmer had 36, J.K. Dobbins had 30. So 3 pass catchers went over this line, including 1 running back, and then the tight end was close with 24. In this other game against the Chiefs, that was an away game. It was a 19-17 loss. Ladd did not play. Ladd McConkey did not play in that game. Josh Palmer had 78. Stone Smart, who was that, had 54. QJ had 48. And then the tight end again missed with 19. So basically what I'm trying to say here is the second wide receiver, whoever gets the second most yards, is definitely going to hit this line. And even the third wide receiver is probably going to hit this line. So I expect Trey Harris to jump in and be the immediate number 2 guy behind Ladd McConkey. Maybe not week 1, but he's way better, you guys. He is so much better than Quentin Johnson. But I even think even with Quentin Johnson there, I think Trey Harris can still get in there, mix it up for 3 catches and 30 yards. No big deal. 3-4 catches, 30 to 40 yards. Trey Harris had 1,000 yards in only 8 games in college last year, and he did have 5 games with over 100 yards, and he had a game with over 200 yards. This guy is going to get some volume in this offense. It's just a matter of will he be able to get there week 1? I think yes, but I am not betting the 34.5 number. I'm only betting it where I got it at 29.5. I'm just letting you guys know so that if you see that line drop again, then maybe you can get on it with me. And then our next one is going to be Ashton Jeanty over 73.5 rushing yards. This line, I found it at 70.5 recently, so you could actually get a better number than what I got here. And let's just take a look at it. So 13 running backs in 2024 went over this line against the Patriots. Dameon Pierce did it on only 8 carries. 6 running backs went over 100 yards against the Patriots last year. Cook went over 100 with 11 attempts. Mixon went over 100 with 13 attempts. So if we think Ashton Jeanty is going to be getting 20 rushing attempts or more, he's going over 100, people. So in 2022 with Derek Carr, this is what happened. Josh Jacobs had 93 against the Patriots. Obviously, different team, different players. 2023 with Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer, Josh Jacobs had 77. I'm not saying Ashton Jeanty is necessarily better than Josh Jacobs, although I do think that he's at that same talent level at least. But what I'm saying here is if he gets fed 20 plus carries against the Patriots, he's going over 70. Josh Jacobs was able to do it both times on terrible Raiders teams. So I really, really like that one. The next one here is going to be Brian Robinson Jr. over 55.5 rushing yards. I have seen it at 58.5, so it might be going up a little bit, but I don't expect it to go up too high. He did have 133 rushing yards and 73 on 17 attempts in both games versus the Giants last year. So he smashed this line against the Giants last year. It's pretty much still only Austin Eckler behind him. Debo might get a couple carries here and there. Of course, Jayden Daniels could run the ball, but I don't think Jayden Daniels is going to necessarily be running if he doesn't need to. I mean, he's playing the Giants, and if he doesn't need to rush, he won't. He'll just hand it off and let Brian Robinson Jr. do the work. So I really like this bet here. And then so those are my best bets. I do have a couple leans for you. If you're new to my channel, I bet my leans, but I don't necessarily recommend that you bet my leans. I just am not as confident in them as I am in the best bets, but I do still like them. I like to tell you about them so that you kind of know where my head is at, you know what I'm thinking, and then you can make your own conclusions from there. So my first lean here is going to be Tetairoa McMillan over 54.5 receiving yards against the Jaguars. So 21 wide receivers had at least 55 receiving yards against the Jaguars last season. 8 wide receivers had over 100. I like Tetairoa McMillan to become the lead target earner on this team by the end of the year. Now, what does that say for week 1? Well, I think he's going to be on the field, and he is a huge target. He's basically built like Mike Evans. He's really tall, really big, huge wingspan. So I think he's going to be able to rake in some balls for Bryce Young against this Jaguars defense, who wasn't very good last year. Although I do think that they did upgrade their defense coming into this year, and I think the Jaguars are actually going to be pretty good this year. I still think that Tetairoa McMillan can get at least 55 for us. And then my lean to pair with that, not necessarily in the same slip, is Bryce Young over 195.5 passing yards. I've seen this anywhere from 195.5 to 200.5, and I don't expect it to move, actually, because people are not very high on Bryce Young, even though to end the season last year, he was over in 6 of 10 games to end the season last year. So he was playing a little bit better at the end of the year last year, and I expect him to come into this season, and he has some pretty good pass catchers. He's got Adam Thielen, who's a little bit older, but that's the comfort guy. And then we have Xavier Legette, who was pretty good last year, Coker, who was great last year, and then they drafted with their first overall pick a huge ex-wide receiver. So yeah, I expect Bryce Young to be a lot better. By the way, I just want to point something out. Someone can be bad at real life football and be amazing for betting. I made so much money on Bryce Young and Zach Wilson over the past couple of years. Like, it's insane. So yes, I'm betting on Bryce Young. I wouldn't say every week, but probably every week, because they set his lines too low. So of course I'll analyze, all of the games and the matchups, but this week I am leaning towards Bryce Young over this line. By the way, all of Bryce Young's unders towards the end of the season last year, those were wins except against the Eagles. So in games where the Panthers won, Bryce Young didn't hit his line, but in games where they didn't win, Bryce Young went over this line. So if you expect him to not beat the Jaguars, then he's going to go over this line because he's going to be passing to try to win the game. All right, our next lean is Jeudy over 45.5 receiving yards. This is now at 50.5, and I would stay away from it, honestly, there, because we're not getting David Njoku lines. We're not getting Cedric Tillman lines. We don't even know who the quarterback is going to be. So I just kind of took a flyer on this one because the line's so low. They're playing the Bengals in week 1, who have a weak defense. So I think that somebody's going to be able to put up some yardage in this offense. And I think that 2 of the Browns players could end up going over this line. And obviously, depending on who the quarterback is. The first game that he played against the Bengals, he did not go over this line. He only had 1 catch for 18 yards. But 3 different quarterbacks played in that game. So that was a crazy game. Cedric Tillman did have 81. Njoku had 76. So 2 players went over this line, and then 2 more players were really close, Elijah Moore and Jordan Akins. And then in the second game against the Bengals, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the quarterback. Obviously, he's not good at all. David Njoku was still able to go over the line, but the other pass catchers did not. So I do think this depends heavily on who the quarterback is, but whether they put Joe Flacco out there or Kenny Pickett or Shedeur Sanders, I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to be putting it out there. And Deshaun Watson, I don't think he's ever going to see the field again for the Browns. But I think any of those 3 quarterbacks is better than Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So yeah, I think they can get Jerry Jeudy the ball 5-6 times to go over this line. My next lean is going to be Michael Penix over 220.5 passing yards. I have seen it 225.5 as well. This line is completely arbitrary. So when the books don't know what to do, they'll set arbitrary lines. JJ McCarthy is also at this same line, not because he deserves to be at this same line. It's because the books have decided, hey, we don't know what to do with these guys. Let's put them at 220. So I'm just going to bet on both of them, actually. Michael Penix over 220.5. Last year, Michael Penix was able to clear this line in 2 of the games he played last year, which were competitive. The other game that he played was a huge blowout win, 34-7 against the Giants, and he still had 202. So he was still close there. Kirk Cousins was able to get 276 and 509 against the Buccaneers last season, which is who they're playing in week 1. So yeah, I think that Michael Penix is going to have plenty of opportunities to throw against this Buccaneers defense that allows a lot of passing yards, and he should easily clear this line in my opinion. The next one is going to be, I already alluded to it earlier, JJ McCarthy over 220.5 passing yards. That line also is on the move to 225.5, but like I said, these are arbitrary numbers. The books are just putting out these numbers because they don't know what to do with these quarterbacks yet. Sam Darnold was able to get 231 and 330 against the Bears last year. The 330 was the away game in the cold weather in November. So I think JJ McCarthy, he's playing away at the Bears. It's his first NFL game. So that's the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause. Maybe he throws a couple interceptions. So if that happens, then I still like him to go over the line because they're going to be passing to try to catch up. And they have great pass catchers. So we've got Jordan Addison, JJ, and then, of course, TJ Hawkinson. They have 2 great pass-catching running backs. So I like JJ McCarthy over this line. And if you think that the Bears are going to win the game, which they're favored to win the game, I don't think they're going to win the game. But if you think that's going to happen, or if you think this game stays close, then that means he goes over his line. So yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of a flyer here on a lean on JJ McCarthy. My last lean for you guys is Malik Nabers over 70.5 receiving yards. He had 59 and 127 in 2 games against the Commanders last year. And the Commanders don't really have a great defense. So yeah, I expect Malik Nabers to be able to catch 8, 9, 10 balls here. He is hyper-targeted in his offense. He is playing with a new quarterback. So just keep that in mind. Some people think it's a quarterback upgrade. I don't necessarily think that that's the case. But the play here might be to wait until his receptions lines come out, because his receptions line is going to be set at like 7.5, maybe 6.5. And we're going to slam that. He had 10 receptions and 9 receptions in 2 games against the Commanders last year. So clearly, they're going to be able to get him the ball. And we don't know how many yards that will go for, but he's definitely going to get the ball. 9 wide receivers did clear this line against the Commanders in 2024. All right, guys, so here's the review. I'm not going to say every single name. If you want, you can go through and watch the rest of the video, but we do have 7 best bets for you, and then we have 6 leans. These are the early week 1 player props. If you missed our other videos about the game totals, the money lines, there's a video on that. There's also a video on week 1 touchdown calls. So go ahead and watch those other 2 videos. Let me know what you think in the comments. I love talking about football with people. We can argue in the comments. I don't care. I love arguing about football. And please like and subscribe. My picks will always be free to you. So I appreciate the free little things that you can do for me. Thanks, guys.